everyone, and thanks for tuning in with us again. We are live once more with one of our very special feature and service announcements today. I am here with Prajakta and Debanjan from the Glue team. Thank you both so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you
for having us
here.
I'm really excited that we're getting to do these service team kind of chats today, because I think it's an opportunity that people don't get very often, is to know that their feedback went into making something, and then hear about the launch announcement, and then get to actually talk to the team itself. Do you guys want to tell me a little bit about Glue for those of us that missed the keynote?
So Glue is an ETL service. ETL stands for extract, transform, and load. Oftentimes, what we have is that people are generating a lot of data, and that data is stored, for example, in various different databases or places like S3. When you want to process them, you actually have to clean it up, you have to transform it, then you have to load it into various different databases like Redshift, and then you process it. So Glue is actually the service which helps you do that pre-processing so that data is ready for analysis. Prajakta, you want to add something?
So I think the key point about Glue is that oftentimes a lot of time is spent in just getting data ready for analytics. And with Glue, we are trying to take away the undifferentiated work that's part of data prep by doing a lot of data discovery, as well as automatically generating and creating your ETL jobs. And then Glue is serverless, so you don't have to manage any resources. You just work on your jobs and hit go.
It's a theme I think I'm starting to see in more of our services and future announcements. It's that people are doing jobs like that, and they're a lot of work. And we're ending up with kind of the AWS version, where, like, you're right, like the undifferentiated heavy lifting part of it is gone. So it just, how can I focus on the results of my ETL job and not, oh my gosh, this is how long it takes for me to clean and process all this data so that I can do something meaningful with it.
That is correct. I mean, one way of describing that, this is essentially the commute time before you get to the job, right?
I really actually like that, yeah.
You want to minimize that commute time so that you can spend more of your effort in the job. So that's what Glue is trying to do.
I think, like, for a lot of services, that feels like it's like the single biggest thing that I find is important that comes across for customers. It's like that ultimately they should be able to focus on the results of things, so on their actual application, on their actual workload, and less about what are all the other moving pieces that go into it. And I think, like, stuff like Glue it's really important, and then it's stuff that you don't necessarily think about how much time you're saving and like what it's doing for you until you have it, and then you're like, wow, like, think about all the time that I spent processing that data before that now I don't have to worry about it.
That is exactly right. I mean, a lot of people talk about big data and analytics, but if you look at the overall time that people spend on analytics, probably about 75% of the time is spent in actually doing the pre-processing of the data, and that's what Glue is focusing on.
Like, you'd think for analytics, you'd be able to spend all of your time on the actual analysis part and less on the
prepping part.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then another key part of Glue is the data catalog. It's a place where you can bring in all the properties of your data and have a unified view into all the data that you own. So part of kind of defining your analytics or writing your queries or building your reports is also to get a view of all the data that you own. And there are different reasons why you'd want to store your data in different services. You might want to keep some data in S3, some data is processed and loaded to Redshift. So Glue Data Catalog really allows you to view all of that in one unified repository through the data catalog.
You get the whole unified view.
That's true. And we also integrated with Athena and Redshift Spectrum, so you can instantly start querying your data once it's in the data catalog.
I actually had someone ask that this morning, talking about, I think it came up talking about like CloudTrail and S3, but the question was whether Athena and Glue are going to be able to work together.
Well, you have your answer now.
people segued themselves right in. They really softballed that question. They softballed that question.
As you can imagine, we spend a lot of time thinking about the name for the service. And Glue actually really signifies what it does. It's the glue for various different pieces that we have in AWS in the analytics area, and puts everything together.
You could tell kind of when I feel like the way that Matt Wood announced that this morning,
right,
when he was talking about and now we need something that really glues everything together. And we're like, I see what you did there. you need
really, some glue.
You really snuck that in.
That's right.
It does sound like something though. It's really solving, and maybe people didn't necessarily know that they needed it yet, but they're running a lot of jobs. They're doing a lot of stuff that's cool. But as their architecture, as their infrastructure gets more complex, they do really need something that's going to help them see well, here's what the big picture is. Here's how all these things tied together. So that's what Glue is.
That's true.
That is correct. Right. And the other thing that I'm going to kind of highlight here, it's not that there are not other ETL products which are in the market. There are a lot of ETL products in the market, but they don't focus on the target community that we are focusing on, which is developers, which are very, very important to AWS, right? Many other ETL products focus on data analysts, data scientists, but 70% of the people who work on ETL are developers. So that's the target community we are focusing on.
So really something made from developer feedback and from developer wish lists that has been designed just for them and not just for,
well, anyone can use it, but it's primarily focused for developers.
Written to help solve the problems. What are some of the problems, other than the time that it takes to process data like this, what are some of the problems that developers have been having with these ETL jobs that we think that something like Glue could really help them out with?
We do auto-generate code, but that code is Python, which a developer could easily download and edit and iterate over in their own IDEs or notebooks. We do have a way for developers to connect their IDEs to Glue and interactively work on their code. And today, not a lot of code is written from scratch.
Yeah.
Developers are looking for a way to easily share code, to reuse code, and to basically have access to code that's completely editable and customizable, and Glue provides all of that. We have a custom ETL library which we have shared on GitHub today. So you can go and download that library. You can download the samples that we have and then build your scripts, or take the script that we have auto-generated and work on that and edit that further.
I love when we ship things with samples already, so that I can take something on launch day and be like, I have an example. This is a new thing that I've never used before, but they already gave me something where I know how to do it. A couple people following around from Twitch with a couple questions. My first one up is how does the pricing for Glue work?
So Glue is a serverless platform, right? So people don't have to pre-provision their servers before they start their job, right? They pay for their use. And there are actually two types of pricing that you have. Maybe you can put up the pricing page there.
Let me go right to it.
So, what we have is that when you run your job, either ETL jobs or crawling jobs, you pay 44 cents per DPU hour. A DPU stands for Development Processing Unit, which is 4 vCPUs and 16 gigabyte of memory. And we also pay for data catalog usage. You pay for catalog storage and you pay for catalog access. But we have a pretty generous free tier. So for example, for up to 1 million catalog objects and up to 1 million accesses per month, it's free. After that, you pay $1 per 100,000 objects per month, and you pay $1 for 1 million accesses per month.
So, for a lot of use cases, the free tier will handle a lot of the jobs that you'd want to run. But if you have a particularly intensive one, it's usage-based pricing.
But in most cases, you'll be able to run an ETL job probably for half the price of a latte.
Yeah. Makes sense.
So with Glue, we don't charge for any time it takes to actually provision the environment, and then once your job is done, to spin it down.
Just the actual utilization.
So you only pay for the time your job is running.
Awesome. I have another question from Eric Hammond on Twitch. Thanks for writing in, Eric. Says, especially interested in writing to Parquet format and S3 to speed up Athena queries and Redshift Spectrum.
So that is supported today. You want to talk to that?
Yes. So you can just go to our Glue console, pick the S3 bucket that has your data, and just ask Glue to generate a script that will convert it to Parquet.
Awesome. That's actually the second person that's asked about Parquet today too. So it's the people who are predicting my interviews apparently hours in advance.
It is a popular data format, by the way. I mean, a lot of people are using Parquet format for data analysis.
I've been surprised by how consistent people are, and then and you can tell. And I think it's actually one of the best illustrations I've seen is that the feedback that people give and then the requests that they make really are what drive the product roadmap. Because you've had 2 people now ask the same question today about the same product. And the fact that it's there when the product is announced says that that's the kind of feedback that we actually make the roadmap off of.
That is true, but we had an advantage. We actually ran Glue preview for several months.
True.
And we had a lot of people who signed up and used actually Glue in preview, so we do have a lot of feedback from customers.
So you guys got some spoiler
We have some
alerts.
cheat sheets, yes.
I have a final question from Java One Guy. He says, how about Spark SQL? Is there support for that planned?
We support arbitrary PySpark and Spark 2.1. So you can write Spark SQL queries in it. Since our focus is primarily ETL, we are not targeted to natively supporting Spark SQL on dynamic frames, but you can certainly run your code, Spark SQL code in Glue.
Awesome. So far, I'm 4 for 4 for all the formats that people have asked if we support. They've all been supported. I have one more question that popped up. What is a notebook server?
So a notebook server. Notebook is really an interactive editing and debugging environment that we support, right?
Okay.
So what happens is that let's say somebody is trying to write a job in Glue. They would like to use their own notebook in order to do the editing, debugging, testing, etc. So we support those. In order to support that, we have to support a notebook interpreter and a notebook server, which we run internally. People actually don't see that. All that they see is that whatever favorite notebook that they use, we are going to support that in order to support a specific development environment that they're used to.
We run that in order to support them using their notebook of choice.
That's right.
That is awesome. It sounds like we out of the box with supporting what developers are looking for. So kind of from a very specific use case, and then with a bunch of different data formats. So we've talked about how developers are going to use it. We've talked about kind of the problems that it's solving. I guess what else should we know? If I'm a developer and I go and I want to use the Glue right now, where would I get started? What kind of job would I want to start out with?
Probably want to talk about a couple of use cases.
I would love some use cases.
Yeah. Let me go right to it. All right. So as I was mentioning, Glue has a data catalog and an ETL engine. So Glue Data Catalog really brings in all the data that you own. Today we support a set of AWS services, and we'll continue to add more. We'll continue to integrate with more services. But as you can see here, your data catalog could really be the central place where you go and discover your data, find properties of your data, and then that is available to your Glue ETL jobs. And it's also available to EMR, Athena, as well as Redshift Spectrum. So just you catalog your data once, and then it's readily available for analytics in multiple different services. So that is a pretty key use case. It really allows you to understand your data assets. Do you want to add something to that?
And you might want to flip through and say a few sentences about each of this. So
the next use case that I guess is a use case that a couple of your users that asked about Parquet are working on. So this is basically to use Glue and Glue Data Catalog to prep your data so that it's queryable using Athena, Redshift Spectrum, and EMR. So we have something called as crawlers that automatically go and scan your data and discover its metadata like table definitions, and then they populate your data catalog. Crawlers make it easy to build and update your data catalog. And then once your data is in the catalog, you can just go to any of the services that allow you to query this data and just start typing your SQL queries. So this tends to be a very popular use case.
It seems like I think what's really cool about those two is that like it's people already have a bunch of data, and like Glue is literally doing exactly what the name sounds like. It's like it's getting a way for you to take your big pool of data, your all of your data sources, and then get them somewhere else where you can do something meaningful with them. And it's that missing piece between like how do I get my stuff into a BI tool or into somewhere where I can like draw conclusions from it. Yep. It's the missing step in between like here's my unstructured data and here's my graph.
So there is a concept that pretty well known called dark data, right? People generate a lot of data. It's coming from click streams, it's coming from different logs. And what happens is that unless you can clean that data, transform that data for analysis, that data sits somewhere and nobody actually knows what they're good for. So what Glue is really trying to do is to move that data from dark spaces to somewhere you can actually analyze and get insights from them.
We talked about something similar for security too, which is that when you might have a bunch of logs, so you might technically have like every single request that was ever made to your load balancer, but if it's just sitting in an unstructured file or you've just dumped it to a bucket somewhere and it's not in any usable format, what happens when someone's like, well, we think there's been a problem, but and you're like, well, I have all the data, so we're good. And it's like, but are you good? Because it's just one giant, it's just terabytes of data, and like, what will you do with it?
That's true.
More likely petabytes and exabytes of data which is sitting there gathering dust, right? I mean, that's what we are trying to.
It's a problem that I think like stretches every kind of job and every kind of problem that you work on, is that we collect so much data, but getting it somewhere to do something meaningful with it is a lot harder.
That's right. That's exactly what it is.
Oh, our other example went away. Did we just look at the data warehouse one, or do you have another use case?
I mean, this is a typical use case that you would see in a traditional ETL world, where you get data from different sources, you run your ETL job to merge it, join it, clean it, and then load it to your data warehouse, where then it's available for your BI tools and querying.
But that one's even cooler though, right? Because I feel like the thing that's extra awesome for me there is that it has CloudWatch at the end. So like you've gone one step further. So you're taking all of your data that you've collected from other sources. You're using Glue to get it somewhere where you can actually take action and process it, and then you're finally taking an action at the end. So you could extract, you could process all of your data and analyze it, and then you could notify someone at the end, which I think is like. Show me insights, yes, and finding the insights is awesome, but being able to take action on those insights is even cooler. Right.
And you can visualize that using QuickSight, for example.
Yeah.
And
you might want to show the Lambda one also, which is...
Everyone loves Lambda.
Yes. So, I mean, increasingly we're seeing that people want data as soon as it's available.
Yeah.
And we hear a lot about people trying to build these real-time systems, or spin up your jobs as soon as new data becomes available. So with Glue and Lambda, actually, you can build a really nice event-driven ETL workflow, where as soon as your data arrives in, say, an S3 bucket, you can kick off a Lambda function that updates the catalog as well as spins up Glue jobs to process your data.
Awesome. I have a couple more questions from Twitch. Storm of Dads says, can Glue index data and shoot it into AWS Elasticsearch or Splunk?
Not yet, I think.
Not yet.
But this is something that's definitely doable. Yeah. And of course, if there is interest, we will do that.
Yeah, I would say. I mean, it's just like Parquet, right? That enough people talked about it that now it's there. So definitely see it coming. And then follow-up question: what data set size should we consider using something like EMR Hadoop instead of something like Elasticsearch? Does data size matter with Glue?
It's not really a Glue question. I mean, the question is probably more on Elasticsearch versus EMR and Athena.
Yeah.
So Elasticsearch is probably good for more structured searches. And if you don't know about what you are looking for, probably EMR is a better choice.
Gotcha. I think the only one oh, sorry. I apparently read that question wrong. I think, does data size matter with Glue? I think maybe that's the...
Not really, of course, any system will have some limitations. I mean, but for all practical purposes, I don't think there is any limitation in terms of data size for Glue.
There is no limitation. Of course, with Spark, it really depends on the SKUs that you have in your data. So if you have a very skewed data set, then your jobs will probably take longer to process it, and we can suggest optimizations, etc. But
Gotcha.
There's no limit on the data size.
And it looks like, clarification to your question, Storm of Dads, when do you use EMR instead of Glue?
Well, so EMR, actually some of the people who have been using Glue has been running their ETL jobs on EMR,
Gotcha.
right? But this is a much more managed service with a serverless implementation, with a whole bunch of libraries that we provide, which gives you a lot richer functionality than you have in EMR.
Gotcha.
But the jobs that we run on Glue, the same code you can probably take to EMR and run it there also. It's just that it will be a lot of undifferentiated heavy lifting that you have to do yourself.
Yeah, it's going backwards instead of what we talked about at the very beginning with Glue, where you're running these workloads and you're doing a lot of the heavy lifting yourself, but why do the heavy lifting when you don't have to?
That's right.
Well, there are certain use cases, and we have customers who run certain workloads on Glue in preview, and then certain workloads on EMR because they just need access to the cluster, they need to do those fine-tuned optimizations. Since Glue is serverless, you don't have access to the underlying environment. But if for certain use cases you do need that, then EMR is the right choice for your workloads.
I think like anything else, there's always exceptions to the when do you want to manage more rather than let Amazon manage it exactly for you.
Yeah.
So.
That's, I think, the right way of answering that. If you have a managed service, you get a lot of things for free. At the same time, it's also buttoned down. So you don't have all the latitudes you have in terms of various different data sources and connectors that you can use on an open platform and unmanaged platform. Then you have a button-down managed platform.
And that's part of the trade-off that you make for managed, right? Is that like a huge amount of benefits, but for some people that have a very specific, very fine-tuned requirement, like sometimes it always makes sense to do some customizations yourself. I have one correction, I guess, from those scare me every time, and it's just about a raffle, and I'm like, I don't know why you have to scare me like that. Well, just wait a second. Randall says you can go to Elasticsearch right now if you want. You just have to write the code yourself, basically. So that is saying true. Not supported out of the box, but like it is totally possible that you can go in there and you can do the work yourself.
Right.
So that is awesome. Still the favorite quote of the day, that the under-differentiated heavy lifting part is like the commute that's getting you to the actual place where you do your work. So I will go steal that for myself on Twitter. It has been a pleasure. Thank you so much both for joining me. Thank you everyone for your questions. If you have more questions, we'll try to answer them as they come up. But big thanks to our service team members for joining us. And I believe next up in a little while, it's going to be deep learning. So stay tuned and we'll be back in just a little bit. Thank you.
Thank you.